A parenting responsibility case was filed in the Ward County, North Dakota's Family Court on December 28, 2021. Heather Hoffman was the plaintiff in that case and had began a nasty dispute between she and her former boyfriend and father of her daughter. While he was fighting for his rights to see his baby girl, Heather attempted to alienate him from their daughter while requesting his money. This battle impacted all those involved in completely different ways and continued on until one party was no longer able to participate in court proceedings. The Minot Police Department said they responded to a report of an unresponsive man lying in front of a home with blood coming from his body around 12:30 a.m. April 22nd, 2022. When the police arrived, they found the victim with a single gunshot wound to the face, and he was pronounced dead on scene. A .45 caliber shell casing was recovered within 20 feet of the victim's body. Later, a .45 caliber gun was discovered about a block away from the crime scene by a neighbor who was out on a morning walk with her dog. After canvassing the area, talking to neighbors, and gathering evidence, police believe the shooting occurred between 11 p.m. and midnight. The police chief was hopeful that video surveillance could play a big role in figuring out what actually happened, why, and who was responsible. The victim was identified as 22-year-old Alexander Riley Eckert. He had been shot through his brainstem. Just several days later, April 26, it was announced that an arrest had been made in Alexander's death. That day, 24-year-old Heather Hoffman was taken into custody around 3:45 p.m. on Minot's Air Force Base. She was held at the Ward County Jail awaiting her first court appearance.
A Minot judge ordered today that a woman charged with murder be held on a $500,000 bond in what state prosecutors are calling a heinous slaying of a man over an apparent child custody dispute.
Prosecutors charged 24-year-old Heather Hoffman with a double-A felony murder charge in connection with the shooting death of 22-year-old Alexander Eckert. Eckert was found with a fatal gunshot wound early Friday morning. Police say Hoffman was arrested yesterday afternoon on Minot Air Force Base.
At her initial court appearance today, state prosecutors asked the judge to hold Hoffman on a $1 million bond, citing the nature of the crime and saying she posed a flight risk due to reports of her trying to buy airline tickets for her and a child. In a criminal affidavit filed today, investigators say Hoffman initially lied about purchasing a gun at a gun show. Hoffman's defense attorney called for a $100,000 bond, referencing the bond set recently against the person charged in the Anita Knutson case.
I think this is consistent with the latest case that they came up with. The what? The latest bond case of the Knutson murder. I think that was the bond you're on. That wasn't me. No, I'm saying that's what the bond is in this area. That's the person you're talking about. That's my request. Okay, I understand.
Meanwhile, the state countered this request, pointing out what they saw as major differences in the two cases.
There are vast differences between that case and this one. That case was a 15-year cold case where nothing else had happened in the interim between the date of that murder and the arrest 15 years later. Here we have an arrest that occurred less than 72 hours after the crime.
Hoffman was taken back to jail after today's hearing. Now she'll be arraigned June 9th. She faces the chance of life in prison without parole if convicted.
You see, Heather wanted Alex out of the way permanently, and somehow Alex had signed an agreement that gave up his parenting rights. His attorney said when Alex came to him for representation, he had no clue what he had signed.
He was upset, tearful, very, very distraught. From what I could tell, he did not comprehend those terms.
During Craig's testimony, the courts played a lengthy audio recording of a confrontation between Hoffman and Eckert, where Hoffman berates Eckert and accuses him of not paying his share of child support. On cross, Hoffman's attorney, Stephen Moninger, pressed Craig on the nature of the recording.
The audio recording contains no threats of physical harm, does it?
Ms. Hoffman says, "I will break your jaw off," and I consider that to be a threat.
Not the first time people have had arguments over custody and child support, correct?
This was one of the more severe ones I've listened to.
The timing of this father's death was significant, as a judge in family court had recently ordered Heather to stop restricting Alexander's access to his child. Prosecutors said this made Heather upset. So upset, Heather purchased a .45 caliber pistol at the Minot gun show less than a month before Alex was killed. It was the same handgun that was found near the crime scene, and the shell casing found also matched that gun. Heather claimed she sold the gun to a former friend and co-worker, and Heather's mother claimed she was a witness to that sale. The friend was Jesse Schroeder, who had actually become the star witness for the state. You see, Jesse had told the police and testified that he was with Heather at Alex's home that night, further telling the police that when Alex opened his door, he said, "We're not doing this now." "Does it look like I'm joking?" Heather replied. Then he heard a loud pop go off. After they left the scene, Jesse hid Heather in the backseat of his car behind his tinted windows and took her to the Minot Air Force Base where she lived, driving her through the entry without informing base security that she was in that car. The state also alleged Heather downloaded the family tracking app Life 360 in an attempt to argue she couldn't have been at the murder scene, claiming she was at her sister's house when her daughter's father was shot dead. After being pushed back twice, opening arguments were presented to a jury in Ward County in early September 2023. The state laid down the basis of their case against Heather, which included matching ballistics and how they believe Heather had motive, means, and opportunity. Stephen Mottinger, Heather's attorney, advised in his opening statement that they would be able to establish that Heather was not in the vicinity of Alex's home when he was shot. "We don't believe that the state is going to be able to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt," he said. Several responding police officers and detectives took the stand, as well as agents with the North Dakota BCI. Star witness Jesse Schroeder testified for more than an hour. He told the jury Heather asked him to drive her to Alex's apartment to confront him about the custody issue. He admitted that at some point, Heather said she wanted Alex dead. Samantha Jackson recalled for the jury the walk she and her dog was on when she discovered the .45 caliber gun. She said on that morning, her dog tugged her in a different way, so off they went. While she was on the phone with her mother, she happened to be looking down. She took a picture of the gun, sent it to her mom, who then told her to call 911, which she did immediately. Special Agent Alex Drosky took the stand as a state witness to discuss his analysis of the home surveillance footage captured on a neighbor's camera system, in an effort to establish the prosecution's timeline of events. Moments of apparent activity were highlighted for the jury, including a vehicle that matched the characteristics of a vehicle of interest in the investigation, which was shown arriving and parking on a street near the crime scene. 2 individuals were seen leaving the area of the vehicle and approaching Alex's apartment building. A short time later, audio is captured that was determined to be a gunshot. The figures were then captured in the footage returning to the vehicle and leaving the scene shortly after the gunshot was recorded. Agent Drosky was pressed by the defense on his evidence and expertise, looking for clarification regarding timestamps on the surveillance video and whether the sound heard was actually a gunshot. He clarified that there likely wouldn't be errors in the timestamps on the footage, as most internet protocol-based home surveillance cameras operate with cloud computing and typically don't require any user maintenance for things such as daylight savings. He also confirmed the sound was definitely a gunshot and not a firework. On the final day of testimony, defense called 4 witnesses: a man that used to date Heather, her mother, her sister, and her brother-in-law. They all testified in support of Heather's alibi and the defense's theory that the state's key witness, Jesse, was the one to actually pull the trigger. Diane Hoffman told the jury she was aware that Heather had arranged a straw purchase for a firearm at the Minot gun show in the weeks before the shooting of Alex, but stated she had demanded the gun be removed from their home. Diane also testified that she had witnessed Heather hand the gun over to Jesse, who then gave her a little bouncy toy for the baby and some cash in exchange. The state pressed her about this.
A day after she bought it, she told me.
So what do you think about that?
I had a fit. I had a fit to get rid of it.
You have nothing other than what you're saying today that said, to show that the defendant sold that firearm.
No, I don't.
You don't have a bill of sale. You don't have anything.
No.
Heather's family members also testified to their knowledge of Heather's relationship with Alex and her comings and goings on the night that he was murdered. They all shared their recollections of various interactions with Heather that evening, during which she complained of having a headache and spent most of the night sleeping in her nephew's bedroom. When the timeline was questioned by Assistant State's Attorney Christopher Nelson on redirect, all three witnesses maintained they had no awareness of her leaving the residence that night.
So this jumpy thing that she got from Jesse was delivered or asked for 3 days after Alex was killed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Closing arguments were given Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2023. The judge instructed the jury they had the option of considering murder, manslaughter, or negligent homicide, but they had to consider the murder charge first and consider the charges in that particular order. They also, of course, had the option of acquitting Heather. That Warwick County jury only needed 2 hours to find the 26-year-old woman guilty of murdering her daughter's daddy.
In September, a jury convicted Heather Hoffman of murder in the April 2022 shooting death of Alex Eckert, her ex and the father of her child. For the first time, Eckert's parents spoke out, telling the judge how their son's death impacted their lives during victim impact statements Friday.
I can easily tell you that Alex was one of the most intelligent people that I have ever met. I humbly ask the court that Ms. Hoffman, a murderous child abuser, received the just sentence of life in prison without parole.
When given the chance to talk, Hoffman maintained her innocence, claiming others were responsible for Eckert's death. She pointed to the man who investigators say drove Hoffman to Eckert's residence and who investigators say was unaware of her intentions.
Claiming he's stupid is the only way to cover why he is not also incarcerated in the discovery. He was told they'd rather him be a witness than a suspect, and coerced and coached him until the story matched the script. I am not the monster that everybody is painting me to be.
Hoffman's attorney acknowledged she was facing prison time, but called for her to serve 35 years.
Frankly, Judge, this is one of the strangest sentencing hearings I've ever participated in the 44 years I've been doing this.
But Judge Gary Lee went with the state's recommendation of life without parole.
The facts as presented to the jury, and as I briefly touched on above, pointed to a intentional, premeditated, planned attack on Alex Eckert, and that attack ultimately took his life.
Hoffman's attorney indicated she has already asked for him to file an appeal.
Heather indeed appealed her murder conviction, claiming the district court abused its discretion by denying her motion of judgment of acquittal, arguing there was insufficient evidence to support her jury conviction. In October of 2024, The Supreme Court disagreed. After reviewing the record, we conclude the court did not abuse its discretion by denying Hoffman's motion for judgment of acquittal, and substantial evidence supports the verdict. We summarily affirm.